Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And today I actually want to talk about the night sky because thanks to Elon Musk, the night sky is never going to be the same again. Now, here's what's going on, and this is thanks to The Atlantic. And I found this article absolutely fascinating, so I've got a ton of notes here based mostly off that. Now, since last spring, early 2019, SpaceX has been launching into orbit dozens of small satellites, and this is the foundation of Starlink, which is a global platform that Elon Musk, obviously the founder of SpaceX and Tesla, hopes will someday provide high-speed internet basically for the entire world. Now, these satellites, interestingly enough, have turned out to be far more reflective than anyone, including the engineers at SpaceX that designed them, basically expected. And so before Starlink, there was about 200 objects in orbit around the Earth that could be seen with the naked eye. And in less than a year, SpaceX has added 240 additional objects into the night sky. Now, Pat Seitzer, he is a professor emeritus at the University of Michigan who studies orbital debris, said in this article, and I quote, "These are brighter than probably 99% of existing objects in Earth's orbit right now." Now, the use of outer space, particularly in this close of a vicinity to Earth, these are low orbit satellites, has never really been tested like this before. This is fascinating. So for most of history, scientists, specifically those that observe the universe and they're looking at visible wavelengths, have had basically no competition or very little competition to access the night sky when they are looking at it. Passing satellites were considered nuisances and sometimes destroyed data sets, but that was actually a very rare thing. Not anymore. Now, some astronomers are calling actually for legal action, but basically they really don't know what to do with this. What happens when new and powerful neighbors, in this case a corporation, has distinct and potentially disruptive plans for some space that you use. And this is what's going on. This is like a neighbor erecting, a shed that's 10 feet higher than what is expected. They have to go through a process to basically tell the city and their neighbors, hey, I'm going to do this. And people have a right to complain in a grace period. And while SpaceX went through that period, nobody really spoke up. And so here we are now having retroactive legal action after they've launched something like 240 visible satellites. And so the interesting part, though, is that this isn't the first time we've seen this issue, but it's definitely unique. Now, radio astronomy, which is a field that has experienced a ton of satellite headaches, really started having these problems in the 1970s when GPS satellites started launching. Now, these GPS satellites were basically sending radio signals throughout the spectrum, including on bands that radio astronomers were using to scan the universe, and that was obviously interfering with stuff. And by virtue of that, the United States and a governing body in Geneva have started to control the radio spectrum in the early 20th century when it became clear that basically radio noise could garble things like emergency messages from ships in distress and stuff like this. And so by the time they started releasing the GPS satellites in the late 70s, there had already been a standard in place that really helped kind of offset this issue, and everybody knew their exact radio frequency bucket, if you will. And if there was overlap, there had to be justification. I'm sure there are people that are into things like ham radio that might be watching this that can give me a lot more information than the overview I'm giving here. And please feel free to speak up and tell me, Nick, you're wrong. This is actually what happened. Again, I'm taking most of this from The Atlantic. But here's the thing. Radio astronomy is one thing. Optical astronomy is another, and by virtue of that, there is no framework for optical astronomy. You're pointing a huge, powerful telescope in the night sky, visually looking at stuff, and now what you're seeing is basically points of light moving from east to west or streaking across this, and it has been described as like a string of tiny pearls across the dark sky. Some people have actually even mistaken Starlink satellites for UFOs, interestingly enough, because they're so bright, and by virtue of this, here we are. And so, well, we have had a problem with light pollution for astronomy, and I have a telescope. I've looked up there. The further away you get from light, the more visible the stars in the night sky becomes. But now it's going to be much harder to discern what, let's say, is possibly an incoming asteroid from a satellite and all of this for amateur astronomers. I'm sure the professionals know this, but as they are looking for, let's say, planet X in our solar system, the ninth planet, that kind of thing, these satellites are going to get in the way and possibly ruin data, or they're going to have to, let's say, start creating some kind of methodology to punch windows or holes in the sky so that astronomers are not being interfered with these Starlink satellites. And Elon Musk is nowhere near done. They're planning on launching thousands of these into the sky, blanketing the Earth. And obviously that in some ways is a very good thing if we are bringing, let's say, low orbit, with better latency internet, across parts of the world that just simply don't have the internet or have horrible internet right now, versus our need to continuously explore the universe through optical telescopes and whatnot. So I thought this was a very fascinating subject. We're going to see what happens. I'm wondering if there's going to be some kind of injunction against SpaceX and Elon Musk for the Starlink network, specifically for this issue, or are we going to see a new class of governing body that starts to say, okay, we have a ton of space debris. We have a ton of satellites out there. Elon Musk is now literally launching a whole bunch of these things, thousands of them, around the globe at 342 miles, which is their final orbit, or 550 kilometers for those of you that are not on Imperial. And that is going to be a very interesting challenge, not to mention the fact I'm wondering how they're gonna calculate these things for launch windows for organizations like NASA or any one of their competitors, including SpaceX themselves. We all have to work together if we're all going into space to explore it, colonize it eventually, whatever that is. And this, I think, is going to be one of the first major tests. But as we see people start working in low orbit, and the Chinese government actually has looked at creating an artificial sun over a region so that this region has low light 24/7, we're going to start to see these problems start to crop up. And it's going to be ubiquitous. I think this is going to be a problem worldwide. So it's a very fascinating subject, I think, anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And any amateur or professional astronomers, please feel free to put me in my place here. But this article from The Atlantic was fantastic, and I'd recommend everybody to read it if you're interested about astronomy and the new technology that is going to blanket the world with the internet and what the possible negative effect of that could be. So your night sky about to change forever. And that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.